News Talk 1070 KHMO presents On the Mark with Mark Hespin. News Talk 1070 KHMO presents On the Mark with Mark Hespin. On the Mark is powered by Kunis Country Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area at 221 North 36th Street, Quincy. Faith, family, and giving back. That's Kunis Country. And now, here's Mark Hespin.
Good morning, Tri-States, and wherever you may be listening on the News Talk 1070 KHMO app. This is On the Mark. I am Mark Hespin, episode 242 of On the Mark on this Saturday, July 6th, of 4th of July weekend here in America. Thank you so much for making me a part of your Saturday morning. If you are listening on the terrestrial radio, awesome, amazing. Follow me on all social media, YouTube, Twitter /X, and Instagram at Mark Hespin, MarkHespen. You can also follow along on the Facebook Live. Just go to On the Mark KHMO on Facebook. We are, of course, brought to you by the incredible people at Kunis Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Stop by the dealership this weekend. Ask them about that lifetime powertrain, no fear warranty on new and used vehicles. Tell them Mark sent you. Well, on episode 242 of On the Mark, we're going to do some fun things. It's early July. We're a week and a half away from the All-Star break in Major League Baseball. We have an Olympics year, so Team USA is gathering today or yesterday. They first got together, so we'll talk a little of that later on the show. We'll recap some other big free agency NBA stuff that we missed last week on the show. Is free agency officially kicked off last Sunday. PG to the Sixers, Clay to the Mavericks. Talk a little baseball, little Angel Reese later on in the show. And the bulk of the show, though, will be two topics. Hespin headline number 2, which we'll talk about after the break, which is I'm going to rank the top 10 position groups in the NFL. So the teams that have the best weapons. Which teams, if you just look at their running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, not looking at offensive lines, not looking at quarterbacks, you say, wow, they are stacked. And I think there are 10 teams that are head and shoulders above the rest in the NFL. And we're going to get to that after we get to, in honor of the 4th of July, Hespin headline number 1, who are the 10 most legendary athletes in American history?
Hespin's headlines On the Mark.
Legendary is the key word. I didn't say greatest. I didn't say best. Stats matter in becoming a legend. Wins matter in becoming a legend. But being a legend is more than being great. Being a legend is more than being the best. Being a legend means you changed the game. Heroes get remembered. What is Ghost of Babe Ruth say in The Sandlot as we celebrate 4th of July weekend? Heroes get remembered. Legends never die. These 10 athletes, in my opinion, will never die. They are legends. I have some honorable mentions because I think it's hard to narrow it down to 10. But I have a reason for all of my 10. So let's start at number 10. Let's go to number 1. In forming this, I took a couple things into account. Number 1, were you actually a winner? You have championships. You have some stats to back up your greatness in your sport. Number 2, do you have that it factor, that indescribable thing that make people just absolutely latch on to you, cling to you, can't get enough of you? That's important. And then number 3, in being a legend, did you change the game for forever? Was there something, what's the one thing that when I say their name, you can go, boom, that's the thing. That's the thing, right? So let's start out at number 10 and work our way to number 1. Number 10, Joey Chestnut. Joey Chestnut did not eat the hot dogs on 4th of July because he was banned from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. He ate 54 hot dogs in 5 minutes on his own live stream. The winner of the Nathan Hot Dog Contest this year ate 58 in 10 minutes. Joey Chestnut is the greatest eater planet Earth has ever seen. He's phenomenal. And what I love so much about Joey Chestnut, what really I think helps him create the legendary status, is that he burst onto the scene in 2007 and he beat the GOAT. Kobayashi won 6 straight and no one was touching him. And we as Americans looked and thought, oh, well, there goes another thing that foreigners are going to be better at us then. We're big, strong, heavy Americans. We eat more than anyone else. And here comes this fit, skinny, small Japanese guy named Kobayashi. And he's down in hot dogs at a rate we've never seen before. And Joey Chestnut, a red-blooded American man, jumps onto the scene in 2007 and beats Kobayashi. And not only does it in 2007, he does it for 7 straight years. Dominates the competition. He gets upset. He has an injury. He loses in 2015. The fall from grace. Is this the end of the Joey Chestnut era? And what does he do? He comes back in 2016 and he wins 7 straight more. He climbs back to the top of the mountain. And now we have this drama. The Joey Chestnut, the bad boy of eating, signs a big lucrative deal and gets kicked out of the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. It adds to the legendary status that is Joey Chestnut. Is Joey Chestnut a better athlete than some of the people I'm listing off the list? I could argue no, but I could also argue that when you watch what he does, he is a legend. It's insane. It doesn't make sense. The human body should not be able to do what he does. He should be studied for science for all time. And no one will probably ever have a reign as long and as dominant as Joey is. And it's not just hot dogs. The dude is beaten. He's got 30, 40 other records in ice cream and clams and shrimp and all these other horrific things when you think about eating immense amounts. Joey Chestnut's at 10. He sneaks onto the list. There is one person who's an honorable mention I'll get to who I think will surpass Joey Chestnut in about a month and a half from now. But let's move on to number 9, someone who is very secure on the list, and I can't see them ever being off the list, and it's a shame they're this low. Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator. NASCAR's greatest driver, arguably, NASCAR's biggest star ever, and NASCAR's most influential driver in American history. Richard Petty, the King, has 7 titles. Jimmy Johnson, the Electric Machine, has 7 titles. But it's Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator, who also has 7 titles, that raced like nobody else, did it at a time in NASCAR when the competition was extremely high, and also without the restrictor plate racing, it was more about you versus me, what's under your hood, and what's in your heart and your chest, and not as so much about the science of it all and the minutia and the minor details that the NASCAR drivers drive under now. Dale Earnhardt, also adding to his legendary status, died in turn 4 at the Great American Race in Daytona. Well, not during the Daytona 500, but at Daytona. The biggest racetrack in American history. You can ask 90% of Americans, what's Daytona? They'll know, it's some sort of NASCAR thing. Dale Earnhardt, a legend. He will literally live on forever. He is the greatest American at America's uniquest, most American sport, NASCAR. Dale Earnhardt belongs on the list. This is number 3. All you got to say is the Intimidator. Special guy. Number 9. Babe Ruth at number 8. Some may argue this is low for Babe Ruth. I would argue this is about the right spot for Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth has stood the test of time. He is the great Bambino. He is a larger-than-life figure. We think of him as this 6'6", 300-pound giant because of the stories, the video, the finger point, the Sandlot movie in and of itself, helping keep the legend of Babe Ruth alive. I will argue that Babe Ruth now, modern science and technology has diminished some of Babe Ruth. We look at him and say, yeah, the guy hit home runs off of plumbers and part-time auto workers. But he did it at such a prolific rate in America's pastime when baseball was the sport in America, the dominant sport. He did it with a swagger. He did it with a flair. Also died young. He did it eating hot dogs, smoking cigars, drinking beers, and hitting baseballs. There will never be another Babe Ruth. He never went to the 15-day DL with a hammy tweak. He's a legend. He's lower on the list because I think the men ahead of him, they accomplished more, but he'll never be off this list. He will always be one of the top 10 legendary athletes in American history. Number 7, a name that I think doesn't get as much respect as it deserves. If you ask a group of 110-year-olds, do you know who Babe Ruth is? Probably get 40 or 50 that say yeah. If you ask 110-year-olds who Jesse Owens is, probably less than 10. As they get older, they'll learn of Jesse Owens, and that number will close to equal out. But Babe Ruth has a little bit more of a easy figure. Baseball player, the great Bambino, Babe Ruth, the Yankees. Jesse Owens, in 1936, did something that I think gave Americans and the world courage to stand up to what would become the biggest bully in the history of the world and the most evil human maybe that the world has ever produced. Jesse Owens, the 1936 Olympics in Germany, in Berlin, as Hitler and the Nazis took over the country and hosted the world stage. There was talk that the United States should boycott those Olympics. There was talk that the United States should not send athletes to Berlin. There was a lot of talk to spare black athletes, African-American athletes, from the hate speech and the anger that Hitler was preaching in his own country. What did Jesse Owens do? He not only stood up to all those people who said he shouldn't go because he would just be faced with horrible racism and not treated well. Not only did he go, he showed up, and in Hitler's prize stadium, in front of Hitler and a crowd of Nazis who were trying to make the world white, blonde hair with blue eyes, Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals in Hitler's house in front of Hitler's face, stood on that podium. They played the Star-Spangled Banner. They raised it up as he was awarded gold medals for the 100 meters, 200 meters, the long jump, and the relay. First off, that's an insane feat in of itself. Not even Usain Bolt did that. That record stood for Jesse Owens till the 80s. Jesse Owens, yeah, he was not Babe Ruth. No, he's not Dale Earnhardt, where this kind of Americana died in a fiery crash at Daytona. But Jesse Owens in 1936 gave a lot of people in the world hope. And he gave a big FU to a man who would become the most evil and hated person in world history. And for that, he's an American legend and always will be. Number 6, a guy who is literally living the American story. A guy who literally changed his sport. And we're seeing it now more than ever. And a man who still to this day carries his sport. Tiger Woods comes in at number 6. What we love and what we do in America is we build you up, we tear you down, and then we cheer for you when you get back on top of the mountain. That is Tiger Woods. A child prodigy, late night shows, winning majors at 18, 14 in 10 years, a streak like we'd never seen before. He's going to blow by Jack. The injuries, the divorce, sex scandals, all of it to climb on back top of the mountain in 2019 to win at Augusta, to get number 15. And now then to have the car accident, the mystery around that, to now still be, can Tiger come back? He is as American of a story as we have in America. We now have guys like Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy, Brooks Koepka, who can drive at 400 yards on a par 4 and land it on the green because of Tiger Woods. There will never be another Tiger Woods. Brooks Koepka's won 5 in 5-6 years. It's an incredible feat. Rory McIlroy can't do anything but choke. He hasn't won one in 10 years. Bryson DeChambeau is kind of a sideshow. He's won his second. Jordan Spieth won 3 really quickly and has flamed out since. Maybe it was Jon Rahm, the Spaniard, the big Spaniard. It's 1-2. Went to Live Tours, kind of flamed out. Maybe it's Scotty Scheffler. Hasn't won anywhere that's not Augusta. There will never be another Tiger Woods. He is one of the most legendary athletes. In 50, 60 years from now, his name, his records, the way he changed the game of golf will still be what we look at as the linchpin of the pre-Tiger era and the post-Tiger era in golf. It's not many athletes you could say that about. Number 4, now we're into the big 4. These 4 people, if it's 5 through 10, if these guys weren't on your list, I would have to really see who you're arguing for, but maybe you could convince me some of their names. Maybe. But 4 through 1, I don't know how you leave these guys off a top 10 most legendary American athletes list. Number 4, Muhammad Ali. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. His nickname, the greatest. And he was. From 1964 to 1979, there was no bigger athlete on the planet. Sports Illustrated's athlete of the century. His mouth was backed up by his game, by his fights. Very few athletes that spoke the way Muhammad Ali spoke could back it up the way he backed it up. Certainly Conor McGregor can't. I will say this about Muhammad Ali. The thing that I admire about him most as well, he took any fight in the ring and he took any fight out of the ring. He's never shy about voicing his opinion at a time in America where we hadn't seen that from our athletes at the level that he did it. Muhammad Ali is Muhammad Ali. He is the greatest boxer of all time, the greatest maybe political activist athlete of all time, a poet, maybe one of the greatest poets of all time without meaning to be. Muhammad Ali is a legend and belongs at number 4. Number 3 is a guy that his accomplishments cannot be compared. No one's resume holds a candle to this man's resume. For that alone, he's top 10. For the way he carries himself, for the way he represents his country, and for the way he was dominant in the span of time he was, in such a long span of time, over 4 games, we'll never see it again. Michael Phelps comes in at number 3. Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in the history of the world. The man has 28 total medals. 23 of those 28 are gold. Michael Phelps has more gold medals than most countries do. The man, the fish, the legend. He dominated the sport in 4 Olympic Games. Caleb Dressel, often compared to Michael Phelps, who's very good in 2016, young swimmer, 2021 with the 2020 Olympics, postponed to 2021 because of COVID, was the fastest swimmer alive. Won the 100-meter freestyle. Couldn't even qualify for the 100-meter freestyle in 2024. Michael Phelps not only did it in 2 games. He did it in 4 games. He's incredible. No one else like him. 23 gold medals. And he represents the United States still now very proudly. An activist for marijuana for athletes being okay as well at a time when it was kind of sketchy and he got caught smoking weed. He's like, listen, I'm the greatest swimmer ever, and I smoke. Not a big deal. Michael Phelps, the legend, 23 gold medals, gets him to the number 3 spot. Number 2, some would argue this position is too high, that yes, he belongs on the list. But number 2, Mark, is outrageous. I would simply say this. The biggest sport that America has is football. Football has dominated the last 40 years. It will dominate the next 100 years in America's history of sport. There is one man who is by far and away the greatest football player to ever play. 7 Super Bowl rings, over 20-plus years, and now continues on as a legend. It will be a broadcasting legend, carries the torch. He is the first global NFL superstar on a level that we've only seen global superstardom from soccer athletes and basketball athletes. He is that man. Tom Brady's number 2. Tom Brady, he did something that only one other athlete can do. He goes 7. He's got 7 rings. 7 rings. 7 is the number. And he has set the bar now for the guys like Mahomes. 7. Talk to me when he got 7. And he did it at a time in football when the game changed in his career from 2000 to 2023. Went from a defensive running back league to an all-out air raid, throw it 50 times a game league. He transitioned. He transformed. He is the greatest football player we've ever seen. Football is America's heart and soul. The greatest football player as America's greatest sport belongs at number 2 on the list. He's only topped by one man with only 2 initials. You can say to anyone in the world, and they'll know who you're talking about, MJ, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the greatest athlete probably ever. When you just talk about legendary status, only the greatest of the great soccer players, because soccer is such a global sport, can be in MJ's league. Michael Jordan, 6 for 6. That's all you have to say. What he did in the Dream Team put him on a global level like we've never seen any other superstar. He is America's greatest legend. He will always be America's greatest legend. Michael Jordan, because he's also kind of a recluse and he hides away. He's not doing interviews all the time. First player owner. That adds to the mystery of Michael. The Last Dance, the greatest sports documentary ever about the greatest athlete, legendary athlete. He's not only just the greatest athlete, greatest basketball player, he is the most legendary of all of them. He belongs at number 1. Honorable mention, the person who's going to pass Joey Chestnut within a month will be Simone Biles. Simone Biles is only off the list now because she's at that phase of her career where greatest peak of the mountain, then the fall of Tokyo. Like we like to see the fall in our great athletes. And now she's done something that no gymnast has ever done. 3 Olympic Games, still the best in the world. If she wins gold at any event in the 2024 Paris Olympics, she's instantly top 10 greatest legendary athlete. That's legendary stuff from Simone Biles because of the fall. We love the fall and the rise to the top. If you can rise to the top, fall, and then rise back to the top, you're an all-time American legend. Serena Williams, hard to leave her off, but it's tennis. And we are, as Americans, don't think of tennis the way we think of other sports. LeBron James, Willie Mays, Patrick Mahomes, Jim Brown, Walter Payton. Hard to leave a lot of great football players off. Peyton Manning, Hulk Hogan. A listener called me out on YouTube, a good buddy of mine, Dave, and I agree with him. Jim Thorpe, that's a miss from me. Got to find room for Jim Thorpe on that list. Hard to do it. Hulk Hogan, Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is the greatest American hockey player ever. But again, hockey, we struggle with it. I love getting to do stuff like that. You can do that here in July. Can't do that during the football season. When we come back, speaking of football, who are the 10 teams with the best weapons in the NFL? We'll break that list down next. Live and local in America's News Talk 1070 KHMO, the KHMO app. It's On the Mark.
1070 KHMO.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO, the KHMO app, brought to you by the great people over at Kunes Honda Hyundai, number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Ask them about that lifetime powertrain, no fear warranty on new and used vehicles. Tell them Mark sent you. Hespin headline number 2.
Hespin's headlines on the Mark.
All right. We are just a couple weeks away here now from teams fully reporting for camp, and we get the Netflix wide receiver documentary dropping, I believe, this week, like Tuesday or something like that, July 10th. And so that inspired me to put together, before injuries, before all this stuff, right now as we head into camp, which teams can confidently say we have a bunch of weapons, just so many weapons. We feel really good that our quarterback and our play caller and our offensive coordinator and designer has all of the tools to put together wins for the upcoming season. I'm talking specifically about running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So if you're just talking about running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, they're not going to factor in quarterbacks, not going to factor in offensive lines. We're just talking about the skill positions, all right? So let's go through it. I think you'll be surprised by some of the teams on this list and really how high they are. But some of these teams have done a great job putting together some really incredible weapons groups. Let's start at number 10. That's the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay, the addition of running back Josh Jacobs in the offseason really helped them bump their way onto this list. He is a star. He's a top 5 back in the NFL. He gets them there. The wide receivers, very good, but they're very young. The Packers, maybe you could argue, could be a spot or two higher on this list, but the youth movement of the wide receivers still worries me a little bit. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jalen Reed. Very good, very talented. But none of them, I would argue right now, is like a top 10 guy. They are like all three of them like top 25 guys, somewhere in that 10 to 25 range. But this would be a big year for Christian Watson to stay really healthy and show like, hey, I'm the guy who's the top 10 guy in this group. And so then you add in Luke Musgrave, a very nice tight end, but nothing special at tight end. Certainly that's one of the reasons why they're not higher on the list. Number 9, the Baltimore Ravens. So obviously Mark Andrews, who I think is probably the second or third best tight end in the NFL when healthy. You then look at running back Derrick Henry, top 5 running back in the NFL when healthy. That's huge for them. Those are their stalwarts. And then you say Zay Flowers, very good. Great rookie year. Perfectly pairs with Lamar Jackson. So they got a number 1. Is he a top 10? Border, like, somewhere in that 12 to 15 range probably. But then Rashad Bateman, a very nice complimentary 2. So that, as a group, I think is a slightly better group than Green Bay. Derrick Henry fits great in that offense. Mark Andrews is a beast. Huge upgrade over like a Luke Musgraves. Huge gap between him and a Luke Musgraves. And then, yes, Green Bay's got a better overall wide receiver group, but Zay Flowers might be the best wide receiver I've listed so far of the 5 guys. And when you pair that with the fact that he has a solid 2 in Bateman, I put the Ravens at number 9. Who's just ahead of them? Miami. Miami's wide receivers, extremely fun, and I can't wait to watch them. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, OBJ. Waddle and Hill are top 10 guys, right? They are in that discussion, top 10. Hill especially. OBJ, having him be wide receiver number 3 is a really fun thing to think about in that Miami culture and offense. I just have a feeling that Mike McDaniel's going to find ways to get him involved. And so I love that. They struggle at tight end. Jonnu Smith is tight end number 1 for them right now. Solid, fine, but certainly no one that you have to game plan for. That hurts them. And then they don't really have a number 1 back in the Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel's offense. Do you need a number 1 back? No, but Mostert and Achane, very nice, good pieces. So as a group overall, they're led by the wide receivers, 2 elite guy, Hills and Waddle. I put them at number 8, slightly ahead of the Ravens, just because they have, I think, a little more diversity in their weapons. Number 7, I go to the Bengals. The reason why the Bengals are this high on the list, purely because they have 2 top 10 guys in Higgins and Chase. Chase is a top, I think he's number 2 behind Jefferson. Higgins is somewhere in that 8, 9, 10 range. And then you look at the fact that they have a nice complementary running back in Zach Moss. Very solid back. Just as good as a Mostert and Achane. And then I like their tight end more than I like any tight end I've talked about so far, not named Mark Andrews, and that is Mike Gesicki. So solid tight end, top 10 tight end, to go with those 2 star wide receivers, and then a very nice complimentary back. It's not a deep group, but it's very top heavy, and we've proven that those 2 guys alone can be the offense. So Bengals at 7. Number 6, I move to a group now that, again, diverse, and I think you could argue could be higher on this list. I'm just a little hesitant of how the new piece will fit in, and that's the Houston Texans. So Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. That's a great trio. That's probably a top 5 wide receiver trio in the NFL right now. The deeper group than maybe any of the groups we've talked about so far. Kind of right there with Green Bay, only I know I have a more established star in Diggs. And then Nico Collins, Tank Dell had great years last year when healthy. Love the tight end. Top 10 guy, Dalton Schultz, underrated tight end. And then they added Joe Mixon. So they went out and they spent on Diggs. They spent on Nixon because they're not paying C.J. Stroud anything. You have a top 10 running back. You have a top 10 guy in Diggs. You have really nice complementary wide receiver pieces. They were great number 1 and 2 last year, and now they moved to the 2 and 3 spot. That's huge. And then a very, very solid tight end. I like the Texans group a lot. Very solid, very strong. Just a little worried how Diggs fits in, because Diggs is kind of a basket case a little bit. And so I cautiously have them maybe a little lower at number 6. Number 5, a group that no one thinks about. They're in a really tough division. They don't have a star quarterback, but the pieces are fantastic. And that is the Seattle Seahawks. I have Seattle at number 5. Running back Kenneth Walker III, top 10 running back, extremely good running back. Versatile, can catch, screen game, power back between the tackles as well. I love their wide receiver core. DK Metcalf, he's a top 10 guy. Lockett is a top 20 guy. Jackson Smith-Njigba, extremely good rookie year. I think the seal is extremely high ceiling for him still. So a very diverse, very unique wide receiver core. You add that with a very good top 10 running back. And then Noah Fant, borderline top 10 guy at the tight end position as well. That's a really strong group. And I know what I'm getting from that group. I saw them together last year, put up big numbers, when healthy. That's a top 5 team as far as weapon goes. That alone with the improving offensive line is what makes Seattle, I struggle to put them anything less than a 6-7 win team. They just have a ton of weapons. And if Seattle struggles early, their team at the trade deadline, they could get a bunch of first and second round picks for trading off guys like Lockett and DK and kind of rebuilding in that way. Because they still have a guy who you think could develop into a number 1 in Jackson Smith-Njigba. Number 4, this team is carried by their star piece as far as their weapons group goes, But overall, it's a very, very good weapons group. And they obviously have the number one weapon in the NFL, and that's the number one wide receiver in the NFL, and that's Justin Jefferson, the Minnesota Vikings at 4. Jefferson and Addison, that's as good of a 1-2 punch in the league. I think I would put Chase and Higgins slightly above as far as a 1-2 punch goes, but Jefferson is number 1. And Addison is maybe just a hair behind Higgins right now. I'd like to see more than just the rookie campaign. Love the tight end Hawkinson, probably a top 6-7 tight end in the NFL. And then they add Aaron Jones from Green Bay. He doesn't have a ton left in the tank, but for this year, that's really interesting. I struggle with the wide receiver 3 position. I struggle with the depth at tight end and running back. But at the top, if all of these pieces are healthy, those 4 guys are healthy, this is an elite group of weapons that Minnesota has compiled. Who's going to distribute it to them? That's the big question for Minnesota. But we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about the weapons. At number 3, we stay in the NFC Norris division, as Boomer would say, the Detroit Lions. Now, some people would argue this is too high. I would argue they have the best 1-2 punch at running back in the league. It's not even a question. David Montgomery is a top 10 back. Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 10 back, and they are very unique and different. They both can catch, but David Montgomery is at every down, 3-down back, and Jahmyr Gibbs is the closest thing we have in the NFL to Christian McCaffrey and what's his name in New Orleans? Why am I blanking? Alvin Kamara. He's number 3 in that group of like, oh, dude's just a weapon. In space, good luck. He's a freak. So they have elite running back group. And then they have a star, top 6 wide receiver in the league in Amon-Ra St. Brown. A very good complementary piece in Jameson Williams at number 2. Very good number 2. And then you add in my opinion, I think right now is the 4th best tight end in football in Sam Laporta. That seals the deal. Laporta, Brown, Montgomery, and Gibbs, and you add in Jameson Williams as a complimentary piece. This is a loaded weapons group in Detroit. Loaded weapons group. Very, very dangerous. And I think people are underrating them right now. Detroit's at number 3. At number 2, we stay in the NFC Norris division. We've already said the Packers at 10, Vikings at 4, Lions at 3. The Chicago Bears, believe it or not, when you just look on paper, this is a top 3, top 5 for sure. I put them at 2, weapons group in the NFL. You have a top 10 running back in DeAndre Swift. You have 2 top 10 wide receivers when healthy in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. You add in a rookie star at your number 3 position in Rome Odunze. And then you have the deepest tight end group in the NFL. Cole Kmet is a top 10 tight end. Probably close to that number 8 range, 9-8 range. And then you had Gerald Everett, who was a starter, put up great numbers in LA with the Chargers last year. He's now the 2. And then you convince Mercedes Lewis to come back for year 19 as your 3rd tight end. So you have the best tight end group in football. You have DeAndre Swift and a very deep running back group behind him. Very deep running back group. And then you have the number 1 wide receiver trio in the NFL. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, top 10 guys, Rome Odunze. That's the number 2 weapons group in the NFL. I'm sorry. You may call me a homer, but I'm sorry. That's the number 2 weapons group in the NFL. Surpassed by only a team that is embarrassing with their riches, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. Best running back in the NFL, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, 2 top 10 wide receiver guys. Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, and then George Kittle. who's the top 5 tight end in the NFL. What I think this list has inspired me to do is to next week give you my top 10 tight ends and my top 10 wide receivers. Because I said a lot of guys' names, and I think it's time to narrow it down. Time to narrow it down and give you a top 10. I'll try to do that next week for you on the show. Honorable mention, the Rams. Cooper Kupp, Nakua is great. Higbee's solid. And then Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, running back, I'm not sold on. And I don't love the wide receiver number 3 in Los Angeles with the Rams. And then Atlanta. Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Mooney. Nice group, but a lot of high ceiling, but I haven't seen it yet. Come on back, take a quick break. Got a little NBA stuff to catch up on. It's On the Mark, News Talk 1070 KHMO on the KHMO app.
Imagine battling cancer and actually beating it. You feel like you've just come out of the woods, only to discover you're about to go over another cliff. Hi, I'm Kathy Bates, and as a 2-time cancer survivor, I can tell you nothing prepared me for the challenge of lymphedema, a chronic disease often brought on by cancer treatment that compromises the lymphatic system and leads to a lifetime of severe swelling and pain. Lymphedema, LE, affects more Americans each year than AIDS, Parkinson's, MS, muscular dystrophy, and ALS combined. Yet with proper treatment, it can be managed or even prevented. That's why I urge everyone facing a cancer diagnosis to be your own best advocate. Discuss LE with your doctor before undergoing surgery. With patients and doctors working together, we can learn and live. Learn more at lymphaticnetwork.org.
If you're 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket, may be tough. BenefitsCheckup.org is a free website that helps you pay for food, medicine, and more. Visit BenefitsCheckup.org.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO. The KHMO brought to you by Kunis Hyundai, your number 1 Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area. 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Ask them about that lifetime powertrain, no fear warranty on new and used vehicles. All right. NBA free agency, Paul George signed with the 76ers. Right now, you can make the argument Philly is the second best team in the East on paper, behind only Boston. I can't wait to watch Paul George fit into that system. He goes from being the guy who's got to be the kind of face of the Clippers to just being the guy who's here to help Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And I think that's a great role for him to slide into that. It's the traditional point guard, wing, big. Philly can be very interesting. They've added some more depth, and I'm excited, very excited for the possibility of Philly. Can this be the year they finally break through and get to an Eastern Conference Finals? I don't know. We'll see. It's going to make the East. The East is really, really fun right now. Clay to Dallas. Love this for Dallas. Love this for Clay. Dallas needed this. We watched Dallas in the finals. Luka would drive, Kyrie would drive, they'd kick it out to someone, and if it wasn't PJ Washington shooting it, you didn't believe they were going to make it. Hardaway Jr. was a no-show. Derrick Jones Jr. was a no-show shooting. They needed just a guy who can be there to hit big shots. And I think you'll see a motivated Clay for a year or two. This might work. It's not a long-term solution. Clay's only got probably a year or two really left in him. But I like it as far as the window's open. Let's try to strike back while the iron's hot. Big news in the world of basketball today. Luka and Slovenia play Giannis in Greece. Loser out of the Olympics. They're in this kind of play-in tournament, get in the Olympics, so that'll be fun. I want to try to find highlights of that. Celtics locked up Tatum, Brown, and Derek White. That's huge. That's their big three. You make it work then with the big men, Porzingis, Horford, they'll come and go. If you have Brown, Tatum, and White, this team ain't going anywhere. Team USA met yesterday for the first time. I stand by. I predict, and I think the starting lineup should be Steph, Anthony Edwards, KD, LeBron, Embiid. That's my starting five. Wrapping up the show next.
Apply.
From the Salvation Army, welcome to Heartbeat.
If you've attended church for a while, what do you picture when you hear discipleship group? Is it a group of people who meet once a week with pizza and a specific curriculum? In Christ, discipleship is people leading each other towards Jesus. It's accountability, praying for each other and bearing each other's burdens. You may already be a part of a group like this without knowing. Maybe you have a close group of friends who text each other all day, mostly ridiculous memes and jokes. But maybe it's time for you to be the one to step out and discuss something more serious. Ask for prayer for something you're going through. Chances are everyone else needs the same thing. Walk with each other spiritually and hold each other up. This is discipleship at its best.
For more episodes of Heartbeat, visit salvationarmyradio.org.
1070 KHMO.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO. And the KHMO brought to you by Cunis Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Ask about that lifetime powertrain, no fear warranty on new and used vehicles. All right, wrapping up the show here. Big Cubs won yesterday against the Angels. If the Chicago Cubs have any chance of having some momentum to keeping their fans alive, keeping the playoff hopes alive, and this being the year they were supposed to kind of make the jump into that wild card world, they have got to sweep the Angels this weekend. They've got one down, 2 to go, because they then have a 4-game series this week with the very good Baltimore Orioles. You'd be lucky, knocking on wood, if you split with them. And then you have the Cardinals for a 3-game series in St. Louis before the All-Star break. Sweep the Angels, split with the Orioles, win 2 of 3 against the Cardinals. You got some momentum going to break. That's the plan. If they do any less than that, Cubs are most likely dead. Most likely dead. And finally, Angel Reese. Can we give a shout out to Angel Reese? She has 12 straight double-doubles for the Chicago Sky. She's got the Chicago Sky all the way into the 7th seed in the playoffs. If the playoffs start today, they'd be in. This is a WNBA record, not just a rookie record, tying Candace Parker for 12 straight double-doubles. She might lead the league in double-doubles as a rookie. She's a double-double machine, 27 and 10 last night. Both her and Caitlin Clark playing on the same team for the All-Star break weekend. That'll be fun to watch. I laugh a little bit. Like, the crowds aren't there to see Angel Reese. But I will say Angel Reese is only helping herself tremendously by having a hot start like this to her career. Because if she can become a real foil, like winning, being in the playoffs, and doing things like this, setting some of her own records, like a double-double record, that adds a little bit of the weight to her case to being, hey, this is a real rivalry. Enjoy the weekend. Cubs, you got to win one. Someone tell me how I can watch Slovenia versus Greece today. I want to watch Luka and Giannis go head-to-head to try to get their teams into the Olympics.